Good. How are you?
Pretty good. So have you looked at the cost curves stuff yet?
I have some experience with like cost curves, like fixed cost and variable cost for the other classes, but
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't looked too much into the Ignithium practice for it.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but I gave you guys a bunch of videos to watch about this stuff.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you watched them all. I think that there's like 2 hours there, so you could
I
look.
think I've watched most of it.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
because that's basically going to be your guide. Like I said, I'm not
Mhm.
going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but they're all pretty simple, things. You just have
Mhm.
to have the formulas there, and what total cost is, and fixed
Yeah.
cost and variable cost. And in these cases, like if you look at these first couple of questions, right? Obviously, so it asks you fixed costs. So why don't you just tell me number one here? So what's the fixed costs of this?
I would say it's 342.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
because the definition of fixed costs is that it doesn't change when Q changes. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, 342. That's our hint. It's kind of obvious, some students kind of start to think, oh, well, I need a formula for everything, and it's not true. What you
Mhm.
have to do is you have to get to the place where you can understand what the formulas represent and then interpret them in context. That's kind of like the
Yeah.
next level. You guys start out at the principles level, and then you go to the intermediate level, and then you guys will be seniors, and so at some point in time it has to start to click. So
Yeah.
but it's pretty straightforward. And then obviously the variable cost here is the 19q, and question number two is very similar. But let's try to do number two really quickly together. What do you think about that one?
So from what I remember of variable cost, it's based on how many units you use.
Yeah, it changes
So
with Q.
yeah, it changes with Q. So I mean, I guess you would just do 20 times 9 to get the variable cost because if you
Yeah,
were to,
you would
yeah,
discard the fixed cost. That's not
mhm,
variable, right?
yeah, because if you were to add the fixed cost, then it would be the total cost of producing 9 units instead of just the
Yeah,
variable.
right. And by the way, I don't know if you ever do this or not, but I like actually putting the answer in and hitting submit, not
Yeah.
just because I like the affirmation. Yeah.
Affirmation is pretty great, but yeah, I do that sometimes, like, especially if I'm not too sure of my answer, I'll just put it in and be like, okay, is it even close before looking at the hints? But most
Well,
of the
I
time
do
I
it
know.
because I want to know if I'm okay with rounding error.
Oh yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah, because like I could look at this and then I could always say to myself, oh, but I got 179.92. Is that
Yeah.
close enough? But if I put it in here, if it's in, it's gonna say yay.
Yeah, if my answer is like a few decimal points off, I'm like, hold on, let me put it in
Yeah,
the answer part and see if I'm okay.
yeah. So anyway, so these first, five questions are, I would say, super easy. And
Mhm.
the only thing that changes here is as we get to number six, the functions that represent, it becomes a quadratic. And I will tell
Mhm.
you this, it's kind of, you might say like, well, gosh, we could get like really complex with if we're going to have like a polynomial of any order representing
Yeah.
costs. And it's true, but there's sort of a consensus that within the economics profession, and I don't have it here, that
Mhm.
a cubic cost function is usually the highest order that's ever needed. So it's really typical to see, and we don't have them here. It's just a quadratic cost function,
Yeah.
but it's really common to see cubic cost functions in economics. So I
So
just wanted to throw that out there. Hmm.
yeah. So what would be an example per se of like let's say a word problem with cubic costs, I guess.
Well, you mean where you're not given the function, so you can't just look at it and tell that it's cubic?
No, it's just moreover like I've because of principles, I've never seen like a cubic cost function or like a square cost function. Or so I was
Yeah.
wondering like, is that common? Do people actually use that type of function in real
Oh,
life?
oh, yeah. And it's okay. So what you really have to think about is that, where do economists normally sit in private industry? Because occasionally in public agencies, like I used to do consulting for the South Coast Air Quality Management District, the air
Yeah.
quality regulator, right?
Mhm.
And they were interested in the costs of businesses, right? Because they want to know if I, again, ask this business to comply with some environmental regulation by adding
Yeah.
this additional piece of, like, I mean, the simplest example would be they have a smokestack and I'm asking them to put a filter on it. The filter
Mhm.
costs money, and then also they have to maintain and clean the filter, right? Just like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have an air filter in your car that you get changed occasionally, but um,
Yeah.
or if you're the one in the house that's responsible for changing the air filter in your AC unit or your heater.
Yeah.
But if you do that, those things get dirty and they have to be changed.
Yeah.
So um, so they're interested in, how is it going to affect the cost of production? But
Mhm.
private businesses normally, in the management group, they have, um, depending upon how high a level you are in management, you'll have, economists that work in management, and they might be, looking at the costs too
Mhm.
from data, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, have you had your econometrics class yet?
Oh, I'm an econ minor, so I don't have to take econometrics, but I'm
You
contemplating on
use
taking it.
Yeah, well, you probably are you finance, or what are you?
Yeah, I'm a finance major.
Yeah, so I know you guys do forecasting over
Mhm.
there, and so you use some statistical methods.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the same sort of thing. It's that you get, data from your firm, and
Mhm.
then you analyze it statistically, and then they call it curve fitting, but you're trying to find the curve that fits best that
Yeah.
data. And if the data doesn't lie on a line, then if it has a curve to it, then
Mhm.
you have to use a quadratic. So when you think of a quadratic, I don't know if you have a picture in your mind, but hopefully
Yeah.
you do, because it's really common in high school and stuff like that when you're graphing the roots of a polynomial.
Yeah.
Everybody learns the quadratic formula, and you figure out parabola has a U shape, or a mountain shape, an upside down U.
Mhm.
And and so, yeah, it's really common. And a quadratic, I don't know, it looks like that. A cubic, I don't know if you remember, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like an S shape. So
Yeah.
if you were to see the S going up and then curving and then going up again, and yeah, and that's the reason why cubic cost functions are so common, because if you were to actually take the data from a real live business and try to
Mhm.
statistically analyze it and find a curve that fit the data well, you would, most likely end up with a cubic statistical model.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I mean, it is really common in the real world
Mhm.
to end up seeing things like this. Because
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but like from the lectures that I sent you, when we're looking like at average total costs and marginal costs and things like that, in a lot of those examples, it's common to end up with something that looks quadratic. They
Mm-hmm.
look kind
Yeah.
of like U-shaped.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, if you're asking, is it, in real life, yes. In a word problem, yes. Because those are like based on, what we anticipate
Mm-hmm.
that you might be seeing in a real world situation.
Yeah.
But higher order, meaning like, a polynomial of the fourth power or something like that, that's generally not necessary. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
really see that. So I don't know if
Okay.
that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, it kind of does. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we use these equations because yes, they're supposed to represent reality. And if you end up in a situation where they don't represent the reality for the businesses you're working for, because a lot of times economists end up being what they the thing I was gonna maybe introduce you to, if you're in the business school, maybe you've heard of strategic management.
Yeah,
But
I'm taking that class next semester.
yeah, well, it's good if you're an econ minor, because actually the strategic management consultants almost always are people with um, degrees in econ.
Yeah.
And really, what strategic management is mostly about is identifying opportunity costs that are implicit. So I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember when we were talking about costs, or if you were paying attention to the lectures that I sent you, but
Mm-hmm.
you have costs that are explicit, the ones that generate a cash flow you have a receipt for, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have costs that are implicit, which have to do with the way that the business is being managed.
Yeah.
That's the operative word, managed. So accountants generally don't make very good strategic consultants, because they're trained to just look at cash flows.
Yeah.
But the best example of an implicit cost that's practical and real world is idle equipment. So
Yeah.
the example is, I'm a company, I do construction, I have this big expensive equipment, and it's all paid off. So there's no payment, there's no cash flow, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just leaving it parked. Well, guess what? That's a bad management decision if you could be renting that and
Out to
that piece of
people.
equipment and generating a positive cash flow.
Yeah.
So economists are good, the ones that are in strategic management are good at looking at businesses and figuring out how to manage the resources of that business differently to reduce their costs.
Yeah.
And so strategic management consultants do that kind of stuff. I mean, that's one of the big areas where they do it.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so the last two questions are the ones that are the most challenging. So I think we've got all the way, I guess, now through question 10. The only thing is, like, if you look at question 10, so it says consider a firm with this cost function and it's quadratic, and says, what is the average variable cost of producing 6 units? Well, you just have to, remember, okay, you're taking the variable cost, right? And then you're dividing it by Q. So you have to remember that formula. But I think all of these are really easy. But question 11 and question 12 are a little bit harder. And because there's one relationship that you don't see until you get to question 11. So it says, consider a firm with a fixed cost of 365 and marginal cost of 20. What is the total cost of producing 9 units? So here you're given like the pieces, but you're not given variable cost. And so what you have to know is that variable cost is the sum of the marginal costs, right? So in order to do this one well, you have to really, and I'll share a new screen. And well, actually, I'm going to stop sharing, get a whiteboard for a minute. Okay. And again, there are different ways to do this, but I'll just put this, and this is actually in those lectures, you'd have to dig it out, but variable cost is equal to, and I'm just going to put sum marginal cost. Okay. So if I give you the marginal cost, you can recover the variable cost. But I don't know if you know this. So, but that's okay. You're supposed to learn stuff. So in this example, you would have to, I don't know if you remember, but we said that the marginal cost was equal to 20Q. So can you see, Sonica, that that's just a ray out of the origin? And actually, if I was going to be really good about this, I would draw it like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So some actually, and I don't know if you've had calculus, but this actually does relate to the integral or the area underneath the marginal cost curve. So I just illustrated the marginal cost, and if I was gonna calculate the sum to 9 units, then it would be all of this area here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we said 9 units. So we could calculate the area of this triangle, right? To be a triangle with a base of 9 and then a height of 180, right? So we'd end up with 1/2 9 times 180. Do you have your calculator?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 1/2 times 9 times 180. 810. You said 1/2 times 9 times 80, right?
Times 180.
Yeah,
180.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
810.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look and see. So okay. So we just calculated the variable cost. We said it was 810. So 810 plus 365. You have it.
Oh, sorry. I thought I got paused. 10 plus
No.
365 is 1,175. Okay.
Boom. Right. So now question 12 can be solved in a similar way. But I'm going to let you guys solve it. You'll have to figure it out for your homework assignment. It's doable based on everything that you guys know. But anyway, but you see it's asking a little bit more.
Yeah.
right? So you have to calculate the average total cost and then find out.
Is that essentially what we were doing, like how we did for number 11?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. But if you think about it, it's a little bit more than that, because see, you don't have a specific number here.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of think about it. And anyway, it works out just fine, but it's you got to put some pieces together. So
Okay.
And I'm gonna stop share. And okay, so I will ask really quickly, does anybody have any general questions about anything?